Folks, welcome to Paisa Paisa. I'm your host Hanumam Gupta, B50 on Twitter, and my guest today is Ajinkya Kulkarni, co-founder Vint Wealth. This is a very interesting product, guys. Okay, and mandatory disclosure, please. This is also a slightly complex product. It's not like your usual equity, stock or ETF or mutual fund. So I would recommend all of you listening in to please read up carefully before taking any decision. Talk to your financial advisor, etc., etc. This episode, like almost all of Paisa Vaisa episodes, will stick to the concept level, right? We'll try and get into more depth wherever it's possible. But for more detail, please read Wintwell's website and, of course, consult a financial advisor. But hey, guess what? The best part is the founders are very accessible. They are there to answer your question. They've done all kinds of, they've got a very interesting blog on their website. They're accessible on social media. So any questions, you can throw it to them. I have with me Ajinkya Kulkarni, like I said, co-founder Wintwell. So Ajinkya, welcome to Paisa Paisa. Thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me here, Anupam.
Thanks, Ajinkya. Let's start. This is like when we had spoken before, when I was trying to understand the product. Institutional investors, HNIs, etc. These are slightly sophisticated people. Some of them have staff, some of them have offices, some of them have people working for them, and they invest in complex products because they have that kind of sophistication that's required to understand the product that they're investing in, and B, therefore take informed risks. So, folks, Wintwealth offers a very interesting product. They're structured debt products. Okay, I'll let Ajinkya explain this concept to you. Okay, and as we go on into the show, we will get into more detail of what this is to offer. Okay, so typically these products are available to HNIs and institutional investors. Wintwealth believes that they can make this public. Okay, so we're going to discuss all of that. Like I said, you have any further questions, you can ask Ajinkya directly. So, Ajinkya, let's start. Like we had discussed in the when we had first spoken about doing this
Mhm.
show, the kind of investors who invest in structured debt products, which could be of any type, it's a very broad term, is because they have the sophistication, they have that understanding of how these products can also be risky. What I want to ask you is, do you think an average investor with a ticket size of 10,000 has the same level of sophistication? Maybe it might be a good idea to introduce what exactly is a structured debt product and where you guys thought of this.
Understood. So at Winthrop, what we are basically building are fixed income products or structured debt products that give you higher return than FD, but are less risky than equities. You have FDs which are low risk, low return, and you have equities which are high risk, high return, and there is this huge white space in between, and that's why we saw a gap. I and one of my co-founders, Anshul, we come from a lending background, and we knew that such products are offered to institutional investors or HNIs per se, right? And we were seeing the action, and we didn't have access ourselves. So the first question that came to our mind is, hey, we want to invest in this, and we really don't have access. And that's when we started thinking, can we bring it to a retail lower ticket size, kind of at a lower ticket size.
Mm.
Uh, what is different in structured products is, like, if FDs are low risk, low return, uh, all structured products are generally high risk, but there are very good mitigants in place, and that's what a specialized organization like ours do, where we build right mitigants, right? Now, coming to a sophistication part, right? I think it is all about education.
Mm.
When mutual funds started, they were complex. Any new asset that comes on the table is always complex, and then you listen to it more and more, and it gets, like a very commonplace thing in your life. And I don't really believe that sophistication comes with money. So if let's say somebody makes it big through, let's say, selling a tech business, and he has more money, and some guy who has a, let's say, 10-15 lakh salary working in finance, probably the more sophisticated or more ability to understand risk is in the guy who's working in the finance. So what is keen is, like, whether investors can be educated about this, whether the product is attractive enough for investors to get excited and say, hey, I want to understand more. And is there a material available? Is there a uh, place available for them to learn and get themselves educated? And that's what
Okay.
we are creating, right? If you look at how these products were sold to HNIs, there were RMs, relationship manager, who would go to HNI's home or office and pitch this product. And for that arrangement to work, the ticket size was higher. So that is one of the key reasons why the ticket size of these products were higher. We are saying he can we educate people through technology, and like we strongly believe that is possible. I mean, a mix of technology and human touch, right? So and that's what we are doing. So I don't really think that only if you have high like huge loads of money, then you are sophisticated. I think any person can become a sophisticated, probably provided he has aptitude to learn, and there is a reading material available.
Yeah. I mean, in the HNIs and institutional, people also tend to make mistakes. No one's perfect out here. And even if you've got that kind of a corpus to invest, maybe your wealth manager is not giving you the best advice. I totally get that point. You mentioned mutual funds, right? And how when mutual funds came first, people probably had to read up on that and learn about that also, where we have come to a point now. I think the mutual fund industry is probably about 20, 30 years old, but I think this last post 2017 phase, when it's become more of a household product, people have understood exactly, not exactly, but they've got a broad idea, that, okay, there are a few things that we mota we get about mutual funds. I think one is that it is a pooled product, as in it's not just me who's investing, my friend is investing, my family is investing, all of us come together. Third party who's a fund manager handles that money, and market goes up, market goes down, I take the risk. Most importantly, I have liquidity. Tomorrow when I want to sell, I can sell. Tomorrow if I want to buy, I can buy. Now of course I've got tech platforms also. So in that way it becomes slightly more easier to understand. I'm saying all of this to get to my next question, which is that if I can get, between the FD, which is in one space, and equity, which is another space, the white space that you spoke about, there's also debt mutual funds, right? Which is again, relatively, I wouldn't say it's that difficult a concept for people to understand. It has a daily NAV, it has liquidity, it has transparency, it has a lot of things which are slightly easier on the head. So if I were to compare a wind wheels product, I mean, it's called wind wheels. If I compare that and a debt mutual fund, if I'm someone who wants, who can understand debt mutual fund, then why would I go towards a wind wealth? Just to compare these two.
Sure. So I'm going to take a step back here and probably take a look at how this industry is structured. So and there so if we are like if some let's say if some asset is giving you a higher return, right, and there is some risk adjusted return, either there is a hidden risk or there is some arbitrage, right? So this is how we see where the arbitrage is. So you have really customized products for HNIs, right? So all kind of different exotic structures and everything. And on the lower side, you have mutual funds, which are fully commoditized now. And SEBI has done really good thing. Like when you commoditize something, you have to set like benchmarks clearly, saying you can invest in this categories only. You cannot invest, let's say, more than X% in particular stocks. And obviously, if you look at debt mutual funds, they're far more regulated and far more restrictions. So naturally, if debt mutual funds have to operate in that framework, the returns are lower for the similar risk. So there is this arbitrage. So there is HNI and there is this like pure retail, and there is this big segment of mass affluent, which is we are really targeting. So what we are saying is, can we bring this HNI products into this mass affluent segment by productizing this? And there lies this arbitrage, right? So debt mutual funds, let us say one sector is giving you more return for some reason today, but they have a restriction. They can't invest, let's say, more than 25 or 25% in one sector. The debt mutual funds have to have 10% asset in liquid, right? Regardless of what is the fund tenure or what is the fund investment price. So that kills the yield. So therefore, for similar rated products, our products are there. Obviously, these are new products, so these are not perfect. So there is a concentration, and there is a concentration list, so that leads to liquidity risk. And we educate investors, and we have mitigants in place for that. So to answer it, like there is arbitrage compared to debt mutual funds.
Okay. And just to understand the sense, you spoke about how mutual funds are regulated. The area where wind funds, and I believe there are some other players also who are probably going to, who are either in the space or would be entering the space, because that's how fintech startups get into something that's really good. Is there any regulation out here at a conceptual level, not just for wind, but for the industry as a whole that's trying to get into this structured debt product area? Any regulation specifically here?
Yeah, SEBI has, if you are looking, so we work with NBFCs. So NBFCs are regulated by RBI. If you are, our products are listed on stock exchange. So their listing procedure and there are proper regulation in place.
Okay.
We are also applying for a merchant banking license. So we will be also regulated by SEBI.
Okay.
And obviously, when a product is listed, obviously it is like it has passed through all the regulations and it has to follow all the regulations.
Okay, fantastic. So you mentioned mass affluent. I want to end this first part of our episode exactly on that. What is the target segment that you are going after? You mentioned mass affluent, but that's a fairly broad segment. Could you define who in your mind should invest in Wind Wealth quantitatively and qualitatively? Who are you looking at?
So we only recommend people who are in especially 30% tax bracket, uh, because to invest in these products, right? And we are also not targeting HNI where they get a personalized service. So uh, on lower end you have retail, then you have mass affluent, and then you have HNI space. So our that target is, let's say, annual income of 10 lakh to about 1 crore, or could be little less. So that is how we look at mass affluent segment, right? The reason is like, if you are just doing, let's say, 5-10,000 of investment per month, you really don't have bandwidth to invest, look at all these, and that ROI, like time ROI, is not really great. So I generally tell people, if you are not in 30% tax bracket, the best thing is, then focusing on investing, is focus on yourself and get into 30%. Like, I personally believe that. So that's how we define mass affluent segment.
Very interesting. I like that segmentation. So, folks, I'm sure that all of you, I am for sure, all of you are waiting to understand exactly how the product is, how it works. We'll get into that on the other side of this break with Wind Wealth. My guest, Ajinkya Kulkarni, co-founder of Wind Wealth. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the Wind Wealth special. My co-founder of Wind Wealth. Now we're going to talk about exactly how the product works and all aspects of it. So, Ajinkya, let's understand the concept, okay? Why don't you tell us, right? I mean, we defined it in the first part broadly as a structured debt product. My is going by a website is there's an NBFC who's selling loans, and there is you buying the loans, and then there is me buying the loans from so you're kind of an intermediary, and you buy loans from say NBFC X and sell to me investor Y. So if you could just refine this, probably even define this further for our listeners, how does this entire process work and the end product that you offer?
Sure. So we deal in, so the product name is called covered bond technically, right? So it is one kind of bond. So bond is basically a company says, hey Anupam, give me 10,000 rupees. I'll pay you, let's say, 12% return, and I'll give you your money back after 4 years. So that is a normal bond. Now the biggest risk is, what if the company doesn't pay you back, right? So we have a covered bond. So what we do is we work with NBFCs. So let's say NBFC has given 10,000 loans. We select best 2,000 loans according to our credit algorithm. And then NBFC issues a covered bond. So covered bond comes with two guarantees. First is the NBFC is guaranteeing you the return like a normal bond. But if something were to happen to the NBFC, then there is this dedicated pool of loans that you set aside of, let's say, 2,000, 3,000 loans. And repayments from that pool will flow to investors. So it is as simple as that. So there are two level of guarantees, one additional level of guarantee. So in a bond, there is always a entity level guarantee. Here you have a pool level guarantee as well.
Okay, so let me understand this right. I can buy a bond from the market also if I want. I just need to call my broker, or go to a Zerodha and just buy. Could be a tax-free bond, could be a taxable, could be any kind of bond. What's different when I'm doing this from you?
No, so yeah, so a lot of things are different. So we are kind of we look at ourselves as a manufacturer. So what we do is, like, we have our own risk algorithms in place. So we choose which NBFC to work with. We have a detailed selection criteria of which NBFC to work with. Then we choose what portfolios to deal in. So we only deal in gold loan portfolios, vehicle loan portfolios, and property loan. So all portfolios which are which have solid collateral. Then we only deal in lower ticket size loan, retail loans, right? The retail granular loans. And then we continuously monitor these NBFCs, this portfolio, on monthly basis. right? And anything goes up and down, we keep tuning it out, right?
Okay.
So that is the difference. So when you are buying a bond from your broker is not at all involved. So there is, as I mentioned, that like these are high risk bonds, and like a good product there will be with the best mitigation techniques, right? And we
Okay.
do those all mitigation techniques on a ongoing basis.
Understood. So I buy so the bonds that I buy from you go straight into my Demat account and they're listed. You said they're listed also, right?
Yes, yes.
Right. Okay. Ajinkya, let's talk about, and you call it an asset. I understand it as a bond, but let's just work with that. So do you have an upcoming whatever bond issue coming up that I can participate in? That's the first. How will it work? I will sign up on your platform. I will buy these bonds from you. They'll sit in my Demat. What happens after that? Okay, let's just go through it step by step.
Sure. So how you invest is pretty simple. So you fill in basic KYC detail, and we need your Demat ID, 16-digit Demat ID. And then you pay and you get the bonds delivered in your Demat account. You can see in your holdings wherever you. So you can see it in any broker that is registered with CDSL or NSDL, right? And these bonds have specific payout dates. So if it is a monthly interest payout, then you'll get a monthly interest on third or fourth, whatever is the specified date. Some bond come with a payout that is completely at the end of the tenure. So interest is reinvested kind of, and then you get a payout after, let's say, at the maturity. So you get principal and maturity, and all that payment happens through through a SEBI. Now this is where it gets a little complex.
Sure.
Right. So all these bonds are listed on stock exchange, and then the NBFC makes the payout to the bank account that is connected to your Demat account.
Okay, got it. So I want to understand here, the thing is that the debt market has seen God knows how many debacles even before the pandemic. There are enough examples of banks being frozen, NBFCs even of the size of ILFS going for a toss, mutual funds being shuttered, investor money getting stuck, and that's not a great feeling, even if you're getting a great, high return. And this is just how financial markets work. I'm not saying that this is good, it's essentially how financial markets work, but that's how liquidity works. I mean, when there is trouble, if you're on the wrong side of the trade, you're going to pay a price. Okay, that's the dispassionate view. But obviously, if you're someone who has money stuck, it really hurts all of us, especially something like a mutual fund, because it's not very common, right? I mean, you don't have mutual funds shuttering down very often. Given this kind of risk that it is there, that even guarantees don't work, if you in a mutual fund structure also there is a trust, which is supposedly holding my money, investor money in trust, but then the AMC does certain decisions because of which all of that goes for a toss. So that trust is also not worth much. When you've got an NBFC from whom you bought a bond at NBFC goes for a toss, and your money is stuck out there. Even a bank, your money is stuck out there. Just to address this, this hairy question is, what happens if Wind12 goes down? Or what happens if your NBFC from whom I've got these bonds, he doesn't pay up? Fir mera kya hoga, So that is the first question. At a conceptual level, if you can address. The second we'll come to later is how have things been in the pandemic? So let's take the first question first. What level of guarantees are there if my money gets stuck for whatever reason? Wind12 goes down or the NBFC goes down or anything, anything bad happens.
Sure. So thing is that Wind12 is a platform or a kind of a syndication which brings you these assets. So these are even if we go even if we go under, nothing is impacted on the asset, right? So asset are the bonds are issued by the NBFC. I mean, obviously the monitoring will go and that might impact here and there, but there are enough buffers in place, right? The bigger question is obviously is what if the NBFC is not able to pay? What if the NBFC goes bankrupt, right? So there we come into picture, right? That mitigation we talked about. So what we are talking about is what is actual risk of losing money, right? And you can mitigate through the pool. So when you are going retail, so the first deal we did was it was a 10 crore deal. It had about 2,000 underlying gold loans. The second deal was of 20 crore and it had 900 underlying vehicle loans, around 900, right? So so what we do is if the asset size is generally, let's say 10 crore, 20 crore, we always take a 20% extra buffer of the loan. So if the asset size is 20 crore, like the last deal was, we have taken loans worth 24 crores because we know that NPAs are going to be 1.5%. In if something hits very bad, let's say there is floods or COVID like situation again, then the NPAs might increase, and that's why we deal in secured. So in secured loans, what happens is like your gross NPAs delay has happened, but money eventually comes back because there is a strong underlying asset, right? So that way, the assets are pretty like money being lost probability is low, right? Money being stuck, it is function of market, and there are ways to mitigate that, and we will talk about that. So, and you mentioned ILFS, DHFL, right? Uh, what we clearly see is like if if the fraud is avoided, right, debt pricing is pretty clear. The biggest issue in India is corporate governance, right? You don't know. You have seen AAA rated NBFCs going under so fast, and those were mainly fraud risk, right? So we specially are building our tech stack to avoid fraud risk. So therefore, we do borrower cross verification and collateral verification. So uh, how we operate is we basically assume that any data that is given by the NBFC is not true. So we will accept it to be true only if we find a third party proof. So we'll do CIBIL checks, we'll do cross verification of mobile numbers at borrower level. If we have bank account details, we are developing penny drop facilities to check whether the borrower exists, right? And on the collateral side, let's say if it is a vehicle loan, so last vehicle loan portfolio we did, we check all the vehicle detail, engine number, chassis number with a government database, right? If it is a gold loan portfolio, we actually select 10% random gold loan. We actually go to NBFC branches, take out the gold, check for its purity, measure the weight, net weight, gross weight, stone weight, everything. All right. So if the fraud risk is avoided, right, and it is a secured loan portfolio, money will come. That's what we believe.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So two questions here before we get to the how things have panned out part. So the first is you spoke about mitigation risk. Is there anything else, or was this the answer? And the second thing is, once you start chasing yield, as we've seen in a lot of debt funds, you kind of probably have to compromise on the credit quality of your portfolio. So if you were, so do you guys have an average? Because I can't see a credit rating for the product that I'm buying from you.
No, there are credit ratings.
There are. Okay, maybe it's not there, maybe it'll be there for an upcoming product. But if I were to look at an average credit rating of the paper that you guys invest in, what would that credit rating be?
So the first deal that we did was rated A. The second deal was AA. But we frankly don't pay much attention to credit ratings because how they rate entities is pretty bad. I mean, it is not pretty bad actually. I'll explain how it is done. So rating agencies in India is like in India or probably outside India as well. If an entity is downgraded, right, it has catastrophic effects. So entities are very slow in upgrading somebody's rating, right? Let's say a business which has 500 crore equity, right, and they are taking 20 crore, let's say, loan. Otherwise, a business which has 1,000 crore equity but has taken 5,000 crore loan. So obviously, the probability, if you look at the guy who has 5 crore of its own equity and just taken 20 crores from as a debt and lend that money out, that probability is super low. But if the rating of that fellow is low, 500 crore fellow is low, you seem to perceive that as a high risk. So and these are kind of arbitrages we are tapping into, right? So the NBFCs we work with are BBB range rated or A range rated, and the bonds are enhanced. So there are about 3-4 ratings above the NBFC rating. So these are A rated and AA rated. But how we perceive risk is completely different. If there might be a scenario where we wouldn't do a deal, and the rating agency might give a AAA rating. That's okay. I mean, so everybody has their own perceptions of risk.
Okay. This is not a liquid product, right? Like any bond, you have to hold it till maturity. Did I understand that right?
Yeah. So we facilitate secondary trades, right? But we don't guarantee it. And being
obviously, yeah.
right? And because this is such a new product, we tell people is that uh, only invest with a mindset of holding till maturity.
Maturity, yeah.
What our thinking is like once we cross 10,000 investors, then there will be many buyers for secondary. So secondary will be much easier. And second, there is so what we're talking about is liquidity risk, right? And there is a way to mitigate that risk as well. So what we tell people is like if you are, let's say, planning to invest 10 lakh rupees through Wintwealth's platform, don't invest more than 1 lakh in one asset, right? Because there can be a liquidity crunch at one asset, but not like uh, in very extreme scenarios also not on 10 assets, right? So at least your 90%, 80% money will be liquid because there will be a buyer. So liquidity crunch is very extreme, very rare, but when it happens, it hits hard, right? So it is either the market is super bad, which is rare, but the main risk is when the NBFC is into problem. Let's say somebody has downgrade, the NBFC went through a downgrade or something, so there is no buyer, right? So therefore, only way for mitigating liquidity risk is to diversify,
Okay.
and we facilitate secondary trades.
Yeah, obviously the price risk is mine. I mean, if maybe the bond might be able to sell at a price that I bought it, maybe it could be higher, could be lower. You're no one to guarantee that. Obviously, that's how the market works. But
yeah, so this is another bet we are taking, or another belief we are taking. So we are only facilitating secondary trades at par. So what we observed is like bonds get super complex when you explain YTM and ETC and all, because we all have been brought for years in FD kind of model where you say at max there is 1% penalty for
premature
withdrawal, right? So we facilitate secondary trades at par, so you wouldn't lose money, and therefore we are setting expectation on everybody's end, right?
Yeah. But ideally, obviously, you should be holding on to the entire maturity curve so that you get the payments.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How now? The question that I had: how have things been? Because you launched what, last year or 2019? When did you guys launch?
In 2020.
Wow, you guys actually went into a debt market where everybody's not able to pay money, and you're getting B and A rate. How did things pan out, man? The RBI gave a moratorium, for God's sake, and you thought that you could. How have things panned out? Have you NBFCs paid on time? Have there been any events, any issues, anything at all?
No. In fact, I mean, that's just like so. Like we generally think that the industry is bad, right?
Okay.
It is for some people it is really performing well. So if you look at gold loans, right? Gold loans have surged like anything in the pandemic. Banks have been doing 4x volume, right? The first loan 2 portfolios we did was gold loan portfolio, right? And then gold is staying with the NBFC. If the gold value is 1 lakh, the NBFC is going probably 70,000, max 75,000. That is allowed by the RBI, right? And they have right to liquidate gold even before the maturity date if the gold prices fall down. So we haven't seen any defaults even in the gold, like in the vehicle loan portfolio, right? We have funded vehicles, we have refinanced vehicles, which are kind of lower commercial vehicles, so which are essential which are essential good transport vehicles. And these guys have been out in the field in Corona and COVID, and they have taken premiums for that, and which is fair also, right? Because they are putting their lives at risk, and they've actually made money and bought another vehicle. So even in vehicle segment, there are segments which got benefited from this economic situation.
Very interesting. So you basically deal with only ABS. I think it's called asset-backed security. That you wouldn't ever touch an unsecured loan or something.
Yeah. So any event risk that happens, right? So unsecured. So before starting Wintwealth, I've already dealt in unsecured space. My personal lending.
Basically, personal loans and credit cards and stuff like that, right?
Yes, or business loans, but all unsecured, right? But when we started Wintwealth, we were very clear, like the segment for we are building in, we have to stay in secured loan space. Because any event risk, right? Unsecured give you higher return also, but there is a capital loss risk also huge in kind of event. Let's say there is flood. COVID is obviously once in a lifetime thing, but even other than COVID, there is floods. There is some let's say drought or something, and we have seen regularly some unsecured portfolios going bust.
So you're saying that at least for asset-backed security, I mean for the asset-backed loans that you guys have an offer in this past year or past whatever, since you guys have been doing, the interest payments to me as an investor are going on time. On maturity, I'll get my money back. Now, there's no event that's happened so far, at least.
No, and no like event is a very long distance thing. We haven't even seen any degradation in the portfolio.
Nice. Okay. Okay. Kind of winding up the episode now. There's something very interesting that I saw on your website, I think, which is probably provocative also, because you're saying 9 to 11% fixed returns. It's not very, common for people to put a number out there. You've given a very specific range. You're saying 9 to 11% and fixed returns. It's a very upfront claim that you're making, which certain people might say, "Ki on what basis are you making?" Because like you said, हमारे दिमाग में ऐसा है कि जब कोई कुछ गारंटी करता है, if anything is guaranteed,
Hmm.
take a savings plan, for example, the whole thing about pay 1 lakh every year and get 1 lakh every year after 20-25 years, our antennas just go up. Something, कुछ तो है boss इसमें, something तो is there, because who guarantees returns? Guarantee चाहिए तो FD है, you go to an FD, but I don't want that. You're putting on your website upfront 9 to 11% fixed return. So I have to ask, I mean, one is, where do you get that number from, 9 to 11%? And two, why are you using fixed return? Are you guaranteeing this, or what kind of message are you sending?
Yeah, so that's a fair question. So one thing is, there is kuch to hai, there is a risk involved. So that we keep educating people ki this is not a FD replacement. FD mein risk bahut kam hai, and like banks hardly go down, and even like there have been public statement where the regulator has said that we won't let banks go down, and even if they go, there is insurance for investors. So FD is a low risk. There is definitely risk involved. There are good mitigants here, right? And why we claim fixed core? Because these are fixed return products. We don't guarantee. We are a syndicator. These returns are guaranteed by the NBFC, and we are pretty upfront about it. Why 9 to 11 is to set expectation. I could have, if we were operating in, let's say, 13-15%, then we would have said so. But we don't think that's a good price point to operate in. There is no good risk adjusted return products there. If there are some products like that, because there are so many assets that are available to HNIs which are customized, there are, like, if we might bring such assets in future as well, right? But currently we are operating in that range, so we want to set expectation right also, right?
Okay, so you're saying essentially the sticker prices is nothing but the product that you're buying. Like, if I'm an NBFC and if I come to Wind12, then I give you a 10% paper or a pool of loans at 10%. You're saying I'm just passing this on. You'll probably buy it to me at, you'll probably buy it from me at 9 and give it to the investor at 10, or with whatever the equation is. You're just giving me a sticker price which is what's on offer. So it's as transparent as it can get. Have I understood that right?
Yeah. What we are doing is, like, we are actually selecting. So we are kind of doing a gatekeeping for you, and we are also educating you about the risks. So one thing we have been very clear is, like, if you don't want to understand anything, understand the risk of the product, right? So that's what we are doing. But yeah, these are fixed return products.
These are fixed return products, and of course, if any event happens, then that it will follow what any other debt instrument would follow, which is probably that your capital could get affected, or maybe you might skip out on the interest payouts once in a while if anything of that happens, anything of that sort happens.
The probability is low, but it is not. Yeah, there is always. I mean, that's why you're getting that extra return, right?
Yeah, it's just that when you put something out there, expectations get set. Chalo, theek hai, anyway, I'm done. Ajinkya, I want you to tell our listeners, where can they reach out to you directly if they want to ask you questions. I see that you're very active on social media, especially LinkedIn, where you've actually taken a lot of questions that are questioning a lot of questions about the details of your product. So, and since you're also, thankfully very focused on education, I like that throughout this episode, the one common thread that you've been very clear about is you want to educate people, like, know the risk and go up front. How can our listeners reach out to you?
So I'm there on Twitter. I can send links on LinkedIn, or we have. In fact, you can directly reach out. We have a WhatsApp link on the website homepage where people can reach out. In fact, people can directly schedule a Zoom call through our website homepage, right? Because we want people to know things. So we are all available, and DMs are always open.
Okay, guys, the social media properties, the social media profiles of Wind12 are on the description of this episode. If you guys, want to reach out to Ajinkya, to Wind12, just go through all the links that are given on the episode description for this particular episode, or reach out to Ajinkya on Twitter. Hey, reach out to me. I'm B50 on Twitter, and maybe I'll just pass on the question to Ajinkya if you guys are interested. Ajinkya, finally, what's new? What's hot? What can we Win12 in the next few months of the rest of this year? What's coming up for us if you want to invest in your products?
Sure. So, couple of interesting things that we are working on is currently you are investing in bond of one NBFC. So we are saying with 10,000, can people invest in instrument where there are portfolios of 10 NBFCs clubbed together? So there is a good amount of diversification happening. So that is one. And second, we are working something interesting on a lower tenure product, let's say 3 months, 6 months, where the liquidity is very easy to maintain, and people there is a huge demand for short-term products. So we are coming with more products on that addressing those problems.
Fantastic, folks. There you go. That's what you can expect next. But that's it. That's a wrap on this episode of Paisa. My guest, Ajinkya Kulkarni, co-founder of Win12. Like I said, folks, Ajinkya and Win12 social media profiles are all available in the description of this episode. Reach out to them if you have any further question. Guys, listen, I'm an equities person. I'm a fairly straightforward guy, which is why, if this discussions, I sounded a little bit lost, that's because I'm really, debt funds and all that is a little bit, I have to work my mind to that. But, Ajinkya has been very friendly. He's been very open. He's been very transparent about whatever, the details of the Win12 product. Ajinkya, thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this for our listeners. And I wish you, Win12, all the very best for your products.
Hey, thanks, Anupam. Really enjoyed talking to you. And it's been like dream come to be on this podcast.
I've been come on. Oh, that's really kind of you. Thank you so much for saying that. I hope, you're always welcome back on the show. Maybe when you've got the new products out, come over. Yeah? Let's have a call. Yeah, man. I really wish the studio was open, but let's have a Zoom call recording again, right?
Yeah. Would love to. Thank you so much.
Sounds good. Thank you. And listeners, if you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are IVM Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I'm your host, Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter. Thank you so much for listening to Paisa.